have a bit of a reaction against being limited. So if people are limiting me or saying I can't do it, well, my natural reaction is to be like, well, what?
Welcome to the Tales to Inspire podcast. Before we get started on this episode, I would like to invite you to our community so that you can hear more stories to inspire change within your life and positive change within the systems in which we live. All I want you to do is to click on the subscribe button. Your comments mean the world to us with anything that's resonated with you, and I absolutely love your support. I can't wait to go on this journey alongside you. Thank you so much for subscribing. Let's get into today's episode. Today we're going to a deep dive with Kerry Tottingham.
I'm Kerry Tottingham and this is my Tale to Inspire.
Kerry Tottingham, welcome to the Tales to Inspire podcast. I'm so excited to have you today with us.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on.
That's okay.
So, would you like to introduce yourself, who you are, where you're from, and we'll go from there?
Yes, so I'm Kerry and I work for A Brilliant Thing, which is a community interest company which I founded with my mum and my two sisters. I'm based in Bury and my mum and sister's based down south. And we work mainly in Greater Manchester, but also with organisations around the country. And we offer coaching and consultancy for mainly charities, public sector teams, organisations that are doing some kind of social change work.
Okay, amazing. Wow, what a great start. Now, we're going to delve into all of that. But where did this all begin? So let's go back to the very beginning and childhood, your family background and where you grew up. What was life like for Kerry back then?
Well, I was a very imaginative child. So I'm the oldest in the family with my sisters. So I've got lots of childhood memories of kind of being in the garden and having like imaginary worlds. So I think I was always creative, always imaginative, and always kind of exploring stuff. I was a bit of a tomboy when I was a child. And I always wanted to do art and making things and creativity. So I'd write little books and do little stories and drawing and things. That was always like my happy place. And I kind of carried that on through school. Although recently my mum told me that one of my primary school teachers said that I need to apply myself more. And actually, I don't know if that's a lesson that I internalised and took too far, because I now think I need to apply myself slightly less because I'm very into my work. But yeah, so I wanted to do art, and that's all I really wanted to do. And I ended up doing art through school, and then I did 3 art A-levels. So I did ceramics, textiles and art. And actually got to the end of my ceramics A-level, and the school realised that the exam board was the same for my art and my ceramics, so I ended up having to do a whole load of extra coursework so that I could get that ceramics A-level. Right. So basically was making stuff for the whole time. Wanted to go to university because I wanted to do art, and then I eventually got to this place, finished university, and I was like, oh, where's the jobs? What's the job that you do if you've got an art degree? And so that's when I started doing volunteering, and that was the sort of tipping point between me doing art and being quite kind of in my own head, in my own imagination, in my own world. And then the volunteering, suddenly there was this like external world that opened up. So I started volunteering for Manchester Art Gallery and some other art galleries in the area, and doing loads of things. And really from that point, for the next 10 years, I just did loads of random jobs. So mainly they were on the kind of art side of things, but I also worked in an egg mayonnaise factory, I worked in an Ann Summers factory, I worked in loads of weird jobs. And that really kind of gave me a bit of a love of people and cultures, and getting inside different cultures and organisations and teams, and just kind of learning the dynamics and learning and seeing how people interacted with each other. So now I had art, and I had this like understanding or interest in kind of human dynamics and groups and things. And then I started my kind of career, I guess, and trying to bring those things together, and that's kind of what I've continued to do up till now.
So let's get that straight. So after you've left university, you say you worked for 10 years and then you started your career?
Well, no, that 10 years was a sort of preparatory kind of stage. So I worked freelance, so I did lots of freelance jobs. Running arts workshops for children, I didn't drive, so I had a like wheelie bag that I used to take on the bus, and I might be making willow sculptures in a primary school, and then I might be in like a care home doing some kind of watercolours or something, and then I might be or other weird things that I've done. I did a sculpture trail through a woods in Sheffield, which was all made out of plastic bags. I did a pumpkin exhibition thing in Salford that was hundreds and hundreds of pumpkins that we like made into patterns and things and put them all around the park for Halloween. So many odd things. And then eventually kind of ended up doing coordinating a community festival.
Okay.
And I coordinated a couple of community festivals, and that's where I started doing bid writing, funding applications, and realised I was quite good at writing funding applications because it was a bit like storytelling, which, kind of connected to that childhood thing of imagining a future and telling a story and then maybe getting some money to make that future happen. And coordinated festivals, but there was some stuff that I really loved about coordinating community festivals, and there were often these women who were like kind of stoic women of the community who like pulled everybody together, and these kind of matriarchs that I'd kind of find. And I loved it. There was a woman called Janet she was quite difficult with everybody. She was an older lady, and she was quite, lots of people had opinions about Janet, but the way that she galvanised the community to make things happen was outstanding. It was, if you'd put her in some kind of corporate environment and supported her, like the world would have changed. Yeah. And I kept finding these people who were just brilliant and amazing, and I just wanted to work with and absorb everything that they did and learn. But often they were, because of circumstance or because of where they lived or because of what was going on around them, were not able to access some of the opportunities that would have elevated what they could do on a bigger scale. Yeah. And I think I did the festival coordination jobs and then started doing like project management and running various different projects for charities, and it was always about that. How can we find that brilliant thing and then use all the power that we can access, whether that's money or funding or influence or whatever, to amplify that, to enable that to get to a bigger scale, create more change, create more impact. And I think that sort of pattern followed me through the different jobs that I did. And inevitably, when you're quite good at funding applications, you end up getting into a management kind of thing and going down a bit more of a kind of management track. And I worked for the NHS, and I worked for, and that was about collaborating with communities and primary care. And then I worked in infrastructure, so that's voluntary sector infrastructure, which is about supporting charities, community groups, social enterprises, faith-based organisations, and really setting up the support around that sector. And I did that in Bolton and then in Rochdale in Greater Manchester.
Okay, so you're going from this arts-based thing / doing everything, which I see as an incredible development phase for your life. Mm-hmm. Like, it's a great thing. Like, if you want to develop, try lots of different things, and you'll soon figure out what you like and what you. When you was in that phase doing that, were you disheartened because you were doing things that wasn't connected to your art's purpose? But you were doing it still, but that wasn't your main thing, or were you like, you know what, I'm just enjoying the present moment. I'm young. I don't know where life's going. Yeah. And it's fine. Yeah.
So I think I probably shoehorned the art into a lot of those jobs. Okay, so everything that I did was always like, they used to have these things called scrap stores. There is still one in Middleton, but they used to have them everywhere. And scrap stores are places where factories can give their like unwanted waste, right. And then artists and educators can go and like fill up a bag for a £5 just with stuff.
Right, okay.
So I was often, so my house has always been full of stuff, it still is. I've got a loft full. Bits and pieces that you can use to stimulate creative activity with groups, and I still do that now. Yeah. And I also worked as an artist in residence in a primary school, and I did that for 2 days a week for a couple of years, and that was brilliant because I never knew which class I was going to get. Quite often there'd been something that's gone on in the school that meant that I got a different class or I was only working with a certain group, and they'd taken art out of the curriculum nationally, but this school they were really forward thinking, and they wanted the kids to still be doing art. So they were like, well, let's do art through science, let's do art through geography. But the teachers didn't have those skills. So my role was to come in to do creative stuff with the kids, but also to teach the teachers some practical creative skills that they could use. Which meant that quite often I'd get to the school and they'd be like, oh, it's Eid, so half the children aren't in, so we've got these 2 different classes. Could you teach them for the whole afternoon, and could you do photosynthesis? And I'd be like, yes. What do I know about photosynthesis?
Plants.
Exactly.
That's all I know from
Exactly. And so I'd be like mining my own memory, and there was no Google back then, so I couldn't like Google what it meant. Well, there probably was, but maybe I didn't.
It wasn't that long ago.
It wasn't that long ago.
Like, internet did exist.
Yeah. Only just. So what I used to do was go into the art cupboard, and they had this massive art cupboard, and I'd shut the doors behind me, and there'd be Breakfast Club going on behind me, and I'd look and I'd be like, what have we got 30 of? Okay, like how can I make an activity out of this? Okay, how can I plan a session? And in like half an hour, I had half an hour before the lesson started, and I had a load of kids to keep entertained, and I learnt loads of stuff like 7-year-olds can't tie knots. So if you do weaving with a group of 37-year-olds, you're going to have to tie all the knots. Right. So I learnt some like really practical stuff. But the bit that I really learnt was that brain agility, to be able to think, right, I want to create this thing, I want to teach them about photosynthesis, these are my ingredients, this is my time that I've got, how can I make that happen? And I think that's what I learned, that process of like, what are the ingredients, what's the thing that we want to make, and then how can I be the conduit or the facilitator or support that to happen in a way that's going to entertain and educate these kids, and teach the teachers something, and create some kind of outcome that people can be proud of. And so in answer to your question, I think I always brought the creative skills into things, and I think that period really expanded my thinking about creative thinking processes as well as practical creative art making. And then I think the next bit of my career was very much on the creative thinking side of things. And that was the work in infrastructure. But then I think when I started Brilliant Thing, I really wanted to bring in that practical creativity as well as the thinking.
So before we get into Brilliant Thing, what's going on in your personal life? So we talked about your career and what's going on. What's going on at home? Are you having the best time traveling around the world? Are you married? Do you have children? Like what's going on at home?
So I've got 2 children, and I've got 2 stepchildren now as well. I had my children probably in that exploratory kind of period. It's really hard having young kids and a career. So actually working freelance and doing all of those random kind of jobs and really worked for me at the time. So I had 2 boys and they're 18 months apart. So, and again, I didn't drive, so I've got kind of memories of that time of being on the bus with my bag of Willow, but also being on the bus with my double buggy. So there's this kind of imagery around being on the bus, carrying loads of stuff that kind of sticks in my mind. So me and the boys' dad were together for a while, and then we split up, and then I had the boys half the week. And it was a funny time because I had, at one half of the week, I had that job in the primary school that was, although it was all a bit random when I was there. It was a regular 2 days a week, and it was the same end of the week that I had the children. And then the other half of the week, I didn't have the children, and I had loads of one-off jobs. So I kind of felt like my life was in two halves. So there was definitely the exploration kind of side of things, trying new things. I gained a whole new friendship group around that time. But then there was also the kind of slightly more responsible or more kind of ordered, I guess, half of my life. So those two things kind of ran alongside each other for quite a while. And then when I moved into working in infrastructure, that's when things kind of settled in my life personally. So I met my husband around that time. And I think those, where I was personally, had a real impact on my work and how I kind of moved through life. And I feel like that period of time where everything was kind of in flux, like you said, it was a massive learning experience, and I absorbed so much. But also, it was quite a vulnerable period of time because there was that kind of lack of being grounded and lack of security. It was really expensive as well. I didn't have very much money at that time, and there was quite a lot of, it feels like quite a pressured time as well. So yeah, definitely loads of learning, and looking back, I can see all the fun experiences, but living through all of that was quite tough.
How open were you with others in your life about being a single mum, having 2 kids, trying to work these different jobs?
Yeah.
Were you telling others about what was going on, or did you kind of try and live different lives?
Yeah, I think I tried to live different lives. So I think I had different friendship groups. I was a different person when I turned up for these different jobs because they were wanting different things. So I feel like my identity, when I first had the children, I remember thinking, like, who am I now? Because I didn't have a job to go back to. I think career and things has always defined me quite a lot. And that sort of continued. So I feel like I had these sort of different identities, and I really kind of dined out on being friendly and capable and always up for doing things, and that was sort of my outward personality. And I think I probably learned how to hold that boundary, because whilst there was a lot going on kind of personally and kind of behind the scenes, I didn't necessarily have the people around me to support me with that. I also really struggled with the idea of single mum, because I didn't feel like I was a single mum, because their dad was very much is very much in their lives, and half the week they weren't with me. So then am I a single person in this half of the week, and am I a single mum in this? But so I think it was a real trying to work out who I am, what matters to me, how can I create something supportive and stable around the children. Those were all things that I was kind of grappling with at that time. But yeah, it was quite lonely.
I can only imagine. So, Kerry, where does your journey go from there?
So next bit, I guess, is the bit where I start wearing blazers.
Right, okay, the bit where you start wearing blazers. Okay, tell me more.
So I feel like this bit is the bit where I start feeling like, oh, I'm going up in the world. I know what I'm doing. I'm a manager now, and I got this job that had management in the title, and I really loved it, because at first I was like, oh, now I've got a role. Now I can say who I am. That now, I've got all these things that I've been saying or thinking or feeling. I've got a place to say them, and I've got people start listening. So I did a number of different jobs which were a little bit more, they were still in community and kind of health world, but they were a bit more management-y. Okay. So, I was behind a laptop a lot more than I was hands in paint, And yeah, at first I really loved that because it gave me that kind of identity. And I started noticing, those those people that I'd met before that were amazing at creating change in communities but had no power outside of that community, I started thinking about how I could use this management position and these meetings that I was in, and how I could use that to, I'm going to say amplify the voices. It's a bit of an overused phrase, that how I could help people in the room understand the perspectives of people that were not them, or that they would not interact with in their work or daily lives. And there was this real kind of, I guess this is where I started thinking about kind of power, because I was in these rooms with these powerful people. I was lowly in comparison, but these people who were doing things like looking at a list of projects and drawing red lines through them because there wasn't enough money left, and they didn't know anything about those projects or the work that was happening behind those projects, but they were literally drawing red lines through them. Or they might be making decisions about allocating budget or allocating resource, and it seemed to be based on who knew who, or it didn't seem to be rooted in what was happening around that work. And so there was a certain power in being able to articulate that in an honest and clear way, and that made people listen. And I know that in that time, there were quite a few decisions that were changed by the words that I used and I brought into the room. And it really upset me that other people couldn't, So I guess I felt like I'd reached a point of security by that time, or more security than I had previously. And so I felt empowered to be able to say, hang on a minute, let's look at this in a different way, or can we bring in this other perspective? And feeling that for myself, whilst it felt expansive and exciting, and possibility there felt like more possibility in the room because I was able to do that. I also was wanted to find a way that other people could do that as well. Yeah. And also, so I guess around this time is when my health problems started.
Okay.
So I've got endometriosis, which is a gynecological condition, and I've also got some associated problems to do with my bladder. And this particular time, this kind of management era, the Blazer era, it was very high pressure. There was a lot of stress. There was a lot of, it was like back-to-back meetings, 10-hour days. It was very hard work. But I think I started having those kind of health challenges, one, because of the stress of the work, but two, because I'd actually reached a place in my life which wasn't about surviving. So that kind of more difficult period leading up to that, I don't think I could have been ill in that period because there was too much at stake. So I feel like when I created more security in my life, my body sort of went, oh, now we can be ill. Right, and so all of these kind of problems start. And, there's lots of research around endometriosis and similar conditions being rooted in trauma. And I feel like there's definitely some traumatic events in my early childhood and then in that period as well that, I do believe have a connection to the issues that I then faced. And some of those things are not, my stories to tell. But the combination of being in this high stress environment and personally being a little bit more secure, I think my body just reacted, and then all these health problems started happening.
Can you tell me a little bit more about endometriosis?
Yeah.
Like for the people out there, what is it?
Yeah.
How does it affect you? Just anything that kind of gives us more information about that.
Yeah, so it's really common. I think it's something like 1 in 10 people. That statistic might not be right. There's a lot of women that have endometriosis, and it's often undiagnosed. It can, and it's it can cause a range of symptoms to a range of severities. So it's basically where the tissue, which is normally the tissue in the lining of your womb, it grows in other places. So any like cavities that you've got inside your pelvic area, but it can also go into your lungs and into your legs, this tissue will grow. And so if you imagine the kind of womb tissue, what those cells are designed to do is to grow and then to bleed, so to be got rid of through your period. So if you imagine that tissue growing in other places, well, it's still going to bleed, but where's it going to go? So it just goes into your body. So it can cause a lot of pain. There's also, it kind of sticks together your organs. So it can stick your kind of, well, in my case, it can stick your bladder to your womb. So it kind of creates these like adhesions. So, which means that, so normally your organs inside you they're kind of tethered in your body, okay. But so you know when you go over a bump in a hill and your tummy flies up, yeah. That feeling is because your tummy is actually moving upwards. Okay. If you've got adhesions on your tummy, then the organ doesn't move, so that when you move, it hurts because it's like pulling. Okay. So it's hormonal. So you can take hormone drugs, but there's not really, and you can also have operations, which I've had to either get rid of the adhesions, so to like make things move again, or to cut out the endometriosis. But if there's one cell left, then it will grow again. So you can't really get rid of it. So I guess how it affects me, I started off, I was very tired. I got diagnosed with chronic fatigue, which fatigue is a symptom of endometriosis. So, and I hadn't been diagnosed with endometriosis at that point. So I don't think I had chronic fatigue. I think it was part of the endometriosis. But so fatigue, pain, so excruciating pain. So now it's still, I often wake up in the night and have to have a tramadol or 2 tramadol and get in the hottest bath possible and just keep that bath like burning hot for a couple of hours until the pain kind of subsides again, and then I can go back to sleep. And that's, that'll happen if I'm going through a bad phase of it. That might happen every night for a week, or that might happen like once a month. It's up and down. And I've tried a lot of remedies and lots of alternatives. And I had a big list that I was working my way through, including like counselling and other alternative things. But really for me, like hot water, tramadol, that's the best thing. And I guess the other painkiller that I use a lot is work, which we can talk about. But so yeah, I've had a number of different operations and procedures to kind of get rid of things, but I've kind of got to the medical point where they've sort of said there's nothing really else that we can do. So I have a hormone injection once every 3 months, which is it's like a medical menopause. So so I don't have periods anymore, so that helps with the pain. But that also has other side effects like your bone density and risk of osteoporosis, and so yeah, it's a whole big thing.
With all this happening in your life, you've got all these passions and you've got your family and you've got everything going on. When such a big thing happens, are you thinking, why is this happening to me? I hate this, like what's going on? Like getting frustrated, angry, are you feeling sorry for yourself, or are you feeling that's just the way life is?
Yeah.
Get on with it anyway. Like where does it take you to personally?
I think that's changed over time. So I think at first I really just wanted to block it out because I was so busy and I needed to focus on my thing here and block that out. And I think that was a very unhealthy response. I think maybe if earlier on I'd been a bit more like, right, stop, allow yourself to feel what you're feeling, like process it and stuff, maybe that would have helped. But I think for quite a long time I was like, no, go away, which, I've done that around lots of different kinds of pain in my life. I think there's a natural kind of wanting to find an answer. And, you know, people around you as well, especially people that really care about you, they really want to find an answer as well. And it's really hard when someone is in pain and you can't do anything about it. So I think I both felt the pressure of that from other people, but also, you know, wanting to, like, what's wrong? And I think quite naturally, when you've got pain that is so intense, you think there's something really, really wrong.
Yeah.
And whilst the endometriosis, the physical endometriosis is there and causing pain, a lot of the pain is caused by nerve damage because of the endometriosis, and you can't fix nerve damage. So like my most recent procedure that I had, they said it actually all looks all right. Like, there was some endometriosis there, we can see a little bit, but it's not as bad but the pain is still as bad because of the nerves. So I think there was a natural period of, like, wanting to find an answer. And like I say, I wrote myself a list of all the potential things that I could do to fix. So there was definitely a, like, wanting to fix thing. I think I guess it's a bit cliche, but there's been a little bit of a journey of acceptance.
Right, yeah.
So I know how to manage my pain. I know the things that work and the things that don't work. I also know that I'm quite capable of, like, ignoring the pain for a bit. But I also know that if I do that, it kind of stores it up.
Yeah. And then it comes back to bite you in the backside and it becomes 10 times worse. Yeah.
And usually when your nervous system's a bit calmer, that's when it can, like, ramp up.
So a beach holiday is, like, the worst thing for you, Kerry?
Well, anything where there's space and time, which is probably what I need.
Yeah.
You know, so so I guess I'm still on that journey.
Okay.
But I do think accepting what is probably the hardest but the most helpful thing that I'm trying to learn.
No, I completely get you. So going through the journey that you're on, then a brilliant thing. Okay, so you go from working for other people to starting your own brilliant thing.
Yes.
Can you tell us more about that?
Yes. So the name A Brilliant Thing came from being told to stop making brilliant things. So I have a bit of a reaction against being limited. So if people are limiting me or saying I can't do it, well, my natural reaction is to be like, well, watch. So that was the sort of energy that brought it into the world. But I guess there's a kind of fundamental belief that sits behind A Brilliant Thing, which is that with the right conditions, with the right support, with the right people around you, anybody can do brilliant things. So, and I absolutely believe in that 100%. And I know that the world is not set up like that. So the societal structures that we have, the organisations that we create and work in, even if we're trying to create them from a good place, can often replicate oppressive structures, can often reinforce inequality, create injustice. And so if we're going to create these brilliant things, which is the positive, uplifting message that I really want to share with the world, the work can't just be focused on creating brilliant things. It has to be focused on creating brilliant things to tackle those bigger structures and that inequality that exists. And so in this journey, I also did my training to be a coach. So I did my leadership coaching. And my mum and my sisters, who I've mentioned a little bit, one of my sisters is a counsellor, my mum's a counsellor, my other sister works in kind of partnerships and HR, and then I'm a coach. So we're all these we talk a lot, and we're all interested in people and humans and dynamics. Yeah, exactly. So how could we use those kind of skills and that kind of approach to support people to create the brilliant things that they want to create and tackle some of those societal inequalities? And that's been the kind of big question that we've kind of grappled with in lots of different ways over the last couple of years, growing and developing A Brilliant Thing. So what we do now is we do lots of things, but we do coaching and development with organisations. So that's around, sometimes it's about strategy development, sometimes they want to do some team development, create a new project, those kind of things. And we use our creative facilitation and methods to support that. We also do coaching, development coaching with lots of founders and social entrepreneurs and social enterprises who are just starting on that kind of social change journey. And we have the Lighthouse, which is our networking group on LinkedIn. But one of our biggest sort of projects has been the trauma-informed project that we did in Bolton. So it was called Trauma-Informed Communities, and it was a 12-month project, and it was funded by Public Health. And it was about how can we support voluntary sector organisations, so community sector organisations, to become trauma-informed. And what that basically means is help them to create safe and supportive experiences for their clients, but also for their staff internally. Because I've had a number of experiences where I've personally been impacted by the lack of those trauma-informed approaches in previous roles and in organisations. And it was such an interesting project. We worked with nearly 100 organisations. We had loads of conversations in communities about trauma-informed practice, what's helpful, what's supportive. And that combines with our creative coaching methodology and using things like systems change methodology and design thinking. We've sort of blended all of those things to create healing-centred design, which is now our core methodology that we use. So I guess we've repeated a little bit of that exploratory period of my career within Brilliant Things. So we've done lots of exploring, defining what matters, and are now developing an approach and a way of doing things that we're pretty sure creates that kind of social change and transformation. So that's where we're up to now.
Amazing. So you're at this stage, you're a not-for-profit organisation, am I right on that?
Yep.
So not-for-profit organisation, there's 4 of you in the team?
So there's 4 directors. Okay. Oh, actually there's 5 directors, although the 5th one's not quite signed yet. Okay, all right. But that's a man as well. Okay. So there's 5 directors, and then within the actual company there's me and my sister who are PAYE, so we're employed by the company as well as being directors of the company. Okay. And then we work with a number of freelancers for different projects, and we're doing some training actually for facilitators as well, because we want to expand our facilitator team.
Okay. And the work that you do, like, is it project-based works? Do you get funding from certain areas to be able to deliver things, or is it like one-off things?
So most of our work is commissioned. Okay. So it's commission. We get a lot of commissions from the public sector, so from public health teams, and from charities. So that's kind of trading work, and then we've had a couple of funded projects. So we did one funded project which is around creating social value on the high street. Okay. And then we've recently accessed some funding to support our business development as well. But most of the work is kind of commissioned, and then we also have a membership, and we're developing a number of products because we want to be able to offer what we do and offer these healing-centred design principles and ways of working to a really wide range of people. So sometimes there's funded projects to support people who are starting out or developing that we get involved in. But often there's quite a gap in between kind of individuals wanting to create change in the world and organisations creating change in the world. And we often see our work bridging that gap. So yeah, in terms of the 3 things that we've got some product-based offers, we've got a membership, and then we've got our commissioned work.
Amazing. Okay. So where does this find you now, as Kerry Tottingham, and you being you? Yeah. Like, where are you right now, personally, professionally? Like, how do you feel? Like, how is Kerry?
So Kerry is good. Okay. Kerry is, so I guess with A Brilliant Thing, we're moving towards it being something that is owned collectively by a group rather than just by me.
Okay.
And I see a brilliant thing having a place within sort of changing the system and working with organisations and structures that already exist to sort of improve things. But I also have a sort of bigger ambition for the company, for it to be a role model for social change. So I would love us to represent how, or for people to see how we are working to create change that sits outside of the system. So the principles that we've got, as well as teaching them and using them to facilitate our work, we're really trying to embed them in our organisation, and that's really tough. We want to be sort of living. I can't remember the phrase, but so we're living what we breathe. What's the phrase? Breathing what we live, or whatever that is.
Every action doing
exactly.
What you breathe, I think it is.
Yeah. So, for example, one of our principles is around transition. So that's about reflective practice, the pauses in between the action, and creating spaces for reflection. When you're really busy and when you're working in a busy organisation with lots of demands and lots of exciting things that you could do, it's really difficult to carve out those spaces for reflection. But we want to be publicly doing that. So I think on our horizon is some probably quite public and visible and vocal decisions that we're going to make about how we work, because we want to be able to facilitate and guide organisations that we're working with to work in a way that is healing centred and supportive, and so we have to be healing centred and supportive. So I think this period is about us replicating on the inside what we say on the outside, and then really amplifying what we say on the outside to create change outside of just our organisation.
Amazing. Oh, I love this. Okay, so Kerry, we're at the point where we're going to the quick fire questions.
Great.
So this is a point where essentially I ask a question or I say a sentence and you finish that sentence.
Okay.
Now you don't have to explain anything about it, why you've done it or anything like that. We're just then going to jump straight into the next one.
Great.
Does that sound all right?
Yes.
Okay, so you ready?
Yes.
Social change matters because?
We all matter.
Oh, I love that. Trauma can affect us how?
In every way possible, but it's not inevitable.
Wow, okay, so it's not inevitable, right. What can we do about trauma?
Take care of ourselves and show other people that that's possible.
Love that. Being creative
is what I am born to do.
I love that. Some people just have that purpose that they know that's in them. The difference between your work and a job is?
I think it's something about the connection to, it's like my work is something that I embody, a job is something I would do.
Right, okay. I love that. Because essentially what you're saying is, even if you lost your job, your work would continue because that's connected to you and who you are.
Yes.
So the work is part of you. The job is the thing you do that can change depending on whatever that is.
Yeah.
Right, amazing. I love that. If you could give your younger self some advice, that advice would be?
Express yourself.
Right. How much of your life where you're at right now is due to luck and how much of it is due to hard work?
I think most of it's due to hard work.
Really? Absolutely grafted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I do believe that there's something guiding us all outside of us.
Okay. So if there was a government rule, the Kerry Tottingham rule, and it was a law and you got the opportunity to implement that law, what would it be and why?
So the people closest to the problem have the solution. So we need to create spaces where people who experience stuff are part of creating the solution to solve those things, to solve those challenges. So this is like a core thread within co-production work, which we do a lot of. So if we are designing a toothpaste for children and we don't test it with any children and we don't get children involved in designing how that toothpaste looks and feels, then children aren't going to want to brush their teeth. Same is true for if we're trying to tackle some big societal problem. So if we are trying to tackle sexism and it's all men in the room or all women in the room, then how are we going to understand, how are we going to create that change that we want to see? So it's about bringing together those diverse perspectives and creating spaces where people can work together to find that solution. I guess the assumption behind the law is the solution is found in the collective.
Well, and that's really interesting, because with our ambassadors who identify as being disabled, they often talk about that the world that they live in is created by able people and not disabled people.
Yeah.
So actually it's not created for the people who may need certain opportunities or whatever it is. So even when it is created for those people who identify as disabled, that it's not created with those people by those people.
Yeah. So there's all the assumptions that the able-bodied people might make about what the disabled person might need. And actually there's an argument that if things are just created by the people who they will benefit, those aren't the best things either. So I think it's about that. Yeah. It's about the collaborative, and I think it's about the. So without getting really granular, if we're creating collaborative with those different people, let's have a look at it through a power lens and work out who's got the most power in this room and try and equalise that. So are we going to create the supportive ways of working that will help the people that are less able to contribute in an equal way as the people who are more able to contribute for whatever reason? So yeah, there's lots to think about in that.
I'm with you on that. So that is the quickfire questions. And now, Kerry, this is the final 2 questions that we've asked every Tales to Inspire ambassador since the very beginning. So it's, by the end of this year, it'll be 164 ambassadors we'll have interviewed since 2019. And those 2 questions are, Kerry Tottingham, what is your definition of the word inspire?
Inspire means to take what you have inside and find a way to express it externally in a way that other people can see.
Oh, I love that. That is so cool. That's great. And my final question, Kerry, that we've asked every ambassador is, if you were to live your greatest life, the life that you want to live, and you get to your 90s or you get to your 100s or whatever that age is, and you're looking back, what's the greatest achievement or the proudest thing that you feel that you want to have achieved during that lifetime?
I think it's probably your most used answer, but I think it's about family. And well, first of all, I want to get to 85. That's my goal.
Okay, that's your minimum. That's your minimum requirement.
Well, and maximum.
Okay, and your maximum. Oh, so you don't want to go past at 85.
I mean, it's really hard being old, isn't
it? Okay.
So I think 85 is my goal.
Okay.
And so if I get to 85 and I look back, I would like to see I'd like to see some kind of connection between the family dynamics that I've created or worked to create with others, with the whole family, kind of replicated and continued. So I think legacy is really important, and one of the really inspiring things I've heard this year is, are you being a good ancestor? So is what you're doing now something that people in the future, if people in your family or people in the future will look back on and say that person was being a good, whatever they were doing now is going to make things better later. So yeah, I'm not quite sure what the answer is, but it's something about family, something about legacy and being a good ancestor and not having to be there in the future to create that change because you've sort of started or been involved with things that ripple out and create something better later.
I don't know how you can't finish on a higher note than that. Kerry, thank you so much for being on the Tales to Inspire podcast.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's been great.
Thank you for watching today's episode. If you enjoyed today's episode, then please leave a comment in the comment section below, and we cannot wait to see you for our next episode.